Part 1. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Every alien representative in the room turned to watch as the human delegation entered. The chamber was enormous, built to hold creatures of all sizes and shapes. Floating crystals provided light from above. The air smelled strange, filtered and recycled to suit 47 different species at once. Admiral Jacob Carter walked at the front of the human group. His uniform was clean and pressed, dark blue with silver stars on his shoulders. But his face told a different story. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that came from seeing things no person should ever see. Behind him walked 6 other humans, all military officers except for one woman in civilian clothes. The alien delegates whispered to each other in dozens of languages. Some looked curious. Others looked worried. A few looked disgusted. The human ships had been visible on every scanner for hours before they docked. Everyone had seen the damage to the hulls. Burn marks from weapons, holes that had been patched with emergency repairs. One ship was missing its entire front section, replaced with a crude metal framework that barely held together. Commander Lisa Hayes walked beside Jacob. She was shorter than him but carried herself like someone who had fought in 100 battles. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her jaw was set firm. She did not look at any of the aliens as they walked down the long pathway to the center of the chamber. Ambassador Helen Price was the only civilian in the group. She had been a teacher before joining the diplomatic corps. She had studied alien cultures and languages for 15 years. She knew how to speak to these beings, how to use the right words and the right tone. But today, all that knowledge felt useless. Today, she had a different job to do. The High Chancellor sat on a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. He was a Yvari, a species that looked almost like giant birds but with 4 arms instead of wings. His feathers were silver and gold, marking him as someone of high status. The Yvari had been part of the Galactic Council for 7,000 years. They considered themselves fair and wise. The delegation from Earth, the Chancellor announced. His voice came through translation devices that made it sound hollow and mechanical. "We acknowledge your presence. State your purpose." Jacob stopped in the center of the chamber. A circular platform rose beneath the human group, lifting them so all the delegates could see them clearly. Holographic displays flickered to life around the platform, ready to show whatever information the humans wanted to present. Helen stepped forward. She had practiced this speech 100 times on the journey here. But now, standing in front of beings who controlled the fate of entire star systems, the words felt heavy on her tongue. "We come with news," she began. Her voice was steady, but Jacob could see her hands shaking slightly. 3 weeks ago, our colony world New Terra was attacked. The population was 2,100,000 people, men, women, and children. They were farmers, teachers, engineers, and artists. They were building a new life on a new world. She paused. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the whispers had stopped. "There are no survivors," Helen continued. "Not one. The Kresh Dominion came to New Terra with 300 warships. They bombarded the planet from orbit for 6 hours. Then they landed ground forces. They hunted down anyone who had managed to hide in bunkers or caves. They broadcast the entire attack on open channels. They wanted everyone to see what they could do." A holographic image appeared above the platform. It showed New Terra as it had been 2 months ago. Green continents covered in farms and forests. Blue oceans full of life. Small cities that glowed at night. It was a beautiful world. The kind of place people dreamed of calling home. The Drethni representative stood up from his seat. The Drethni were tall, thin beings with skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. Right now, his skin was showing patterns of annoyance mixed with condescension. "This is unfortunate," the Drethni said. His translator made his voice sound dismissive. "But Earth was warned about expanding into the outer rim. The Kresh have claimed that territory for generations. This is the consequence of ignoring established boundaries." Jacob felt his hands curl into fists. Lisa put a gentle hand on his arm, but he stepped forward anyway. "Established boundaries," Jacob repeated. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. "You think this was about territory? You think they killed 2 million people because we built farms on the wrong planet?" He gestured, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed the attack. Ships descending through the atmosphere like a plague of metal insects, weapons firing, cities burning. The image was too clean, too sanitized. It did not show the screaming. It did not show the people trying to shield their children with their own bodies. It did not show what happened to those the creche captured alive. They did not do this for territory, Jacob continued. They did this to send a message. They wanted to show what happens when a young species tries to exist in their space. They wanted to make an example of us. Captain Danny Foster, who commanded one of the human warships, stepped forward. He was a big man with scars on his face from an explosion that had nearly killed him during the rescue attempts. His voice was rough like gravel grinding together. "We received the distress call 16 hours after the attack began," Danny said. "We were 3 days away at maximum speed. We knew we would not arrive in time. But we went anyway. We had to try." The holographic display shifted again. This time it showed New Terra after the attack. The oceans were black with ash. The continents were gray wastelands. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. The cities were rubble. The forests were gone. Even the air itself was poisoned now. When we arrived, the creche were still there, Danny continued. They were picking through the ruins, looking for anything valuable they could take. We found evidence of what they did. Not just the bombing. After that, they came down and they hunted our people for sport. They took prisoners and tortured them. They recorded it all and sent it to their homeworld as entertainment. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Some aliens looked horrified. Others looked skeptical. The Velkari representative, a being made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbows, made a sound like glass breaking. It was their species' way of expressing disgust. The High Chancellor raised 2 of his forearms, calling for silence. The chamber gradually quieted down. "These are serious accusations," the Chancellor said carefully. "If true, they would constitute crimes against all civilized law. However, Earth must understand that the Council cannot simply take military action based on claims alone. We must investigate. We must verify. We must follow proper procedures." Helen looked at Jacob. He looked at Lisa. They all knew what was coming next. They had discussed this moment during the long journey to the Council station. They had argued about it. Some had said they should not reveal what happened next. But in the end, they all agreed. The truth was the only weapon they had. "We are not here to ask for military action," Helen said quietly. "We are here to inform you of actions already taken." The chamber went silent again. The Chancellor's feathers ruffled in a way that suggested concern. "What do you mean?" he asked. Jacob Carter stepped to the very edge of the platform. He looked at each alien representative in turn. His voice was cold and hard as iron. "We found the creche fleet," he said, "and we destroyed it." Part 2. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the translation devices seemed to pause, as if the machines themselves could not believe what they had just heard. The High Chancellor leaned forward on his platform. His silver and gold feathers were now standing straight up, which among his people indicated extreme shock. "You destroyed a creche fleet," he said slowly. "Without council authorization? Without even consulting us?" Commander Lisa Hayes activated the holographic controls. A new image appeared in the air above the human delegation. It showed a massive debris field floating in the darkness of space. Thousands of pieces of metal and plastic drifted in zero gravity. Frozen bodies tumbled among the wreckage. The debris field stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. "This was the Crash Victory Fleet," Lisa said. Her voice was clinical, like a doctor describing an injury. 347 warships, 72 transport vessels, 29 support craft, total personnel, approximately 460,000 Crash warriors and crew. She let that number sink in. 460,000. It was a staggering amount of life to end, but it was still less than a quarter of what humanity had lost on New Terra. "The Crash were celebrating when we found them," Lisa continued. "They had set up a festival in orbit around one of their colony worlds. They were displaying trophies taken from our people, clothing, personal items, body parts. Several alien delegates made sounds of disgust. The Torvash representative, a small being with large eyes and soft fur, covered her face with her hands. The Torvash had been victims of Kresh raids for centuries. They knew exactly what the Kresh were capable of. "We gave them one chance to surrender," Lisa said. "We broadcast on all channels. We told them to power down their weapons and prepare to face justice for their crimes. They responded by launching fighters and opening fire on our lead ship." Captain Danny Foster took over the briefing. He manipulated the holographic controls and the display changed to show tactical data. Ship movements, weapon signatures, energy readings. The battle lasted 42 minutes, Danny said. We had 12 ships. They had nearly 400. On paper, we should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. But we had something they did not expect. And what was that? The Drethni representative demanded. His skin was flashing angry red patterns now. Desperation, Danny answered simply, and better weapons. The display showed the battle in fast motion. The human ships moved like sharks through water, fast and deadly. Their weapons fired with precision that seemed impossible. Each shot found its target. Each target exploded or went dark. The Kresh ships tried to respond, but their formations fell apart within minutes. They were used to fighting weaker opponents. They were used to enemies who ran away or begged for mercy. Humans did neither. We focused our fire on their command ships first, Danny explained. Without coordination, their fleet became a mob. They started running into each other. Some tried to retreat. We did not let them. We chased down every ship that tried to escape. Every single one. Lieutenant Amy Collins stepped forward. She was young, barely 25, but she had aged years in the past 3 weeks. She had been on the ESS Defender when it took heavy damage. 60 crew members died when a Kresh missile penetrated their shields. She had helped pull bodies from the wreckage. We took no prisoners, Amy said quietly. The Kresh showed no mercy to our civilians. We showed none to their warriors. When their ships were disabled, we did not stop firing. When they launched escape pods, we destroyed those too. We made sure that every single Kresh who participated in the New Terra massacre died. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates were on their feet, shouting at each other in dozens of languages. The translation devices struggled to keep up. Words like barbaric and genocide and monsters echoed through the massive room. The Drethni representative was screaming now, his skin flashing colors so fast it hurt to look at. This is an outrage. This is murder! You are no better than the Kresh themselves. Jacob Carter let them yell. He stood still on the platform, his face showing no emotion at all. He had expected this reaction. Part of him had hoped for it, actually. It meant they understood the message. After several minutes, the High Chancellor managed to restore order. He used a sonic pulse that made everyone's ears ring. The delegates slowly sat back down, though many continued to mutter angrily. Admiral Carter, the Chancellor said. His voice was strained. You must understand how this looks. You have committed an act of war. You have slaughtered hundreds of thousands of beings. You did this without trial, without justice, without following any established law. Jacob nodded slowly. You are right. We did not follow your laws. We followed our own. Your own laws? The Chancellor sounded incredulous. What law justifies what you have done? The law that says we have the right to exist, Jacob answered. The law that says our children deserve to grow up safe. The law that says when someone tries to wipe us out, we will make sure they regret it. Helen Price stepped forward again. She had let the military officers present the facts. Now it was time for diplomacy, though not the kind that anyone in this chamber was used to. The Galactic Council has been in existence for 12,000 years, Helen said. In that time, you have created laws about trade, about territorial rights, about cultural exchange. You have rules for everything, but you have no teeth. When the strong prey on the weak, you form committees. You write reports. You express concern. And nothing changes. She looked around at all the alien faces watching her. The Torvash have lost 17 colonies to Kresh raids in the past 2 centuries. The Velkari lost an entire generation of children to Kresh slavers 30 years ago. The Minith had their sacred world destroyed by Kresh weapons testing 50 years ago. Where was the council then? Where was justice for them? The Torvash representative, Ambassador Kina, stood up slowly. Her voice was soft but clear. The human speaks truth. My people have begged for protection for 200 years. We were told that military intervention would destabilize the sector. We were told to be patient, to wait for diplomatic solutions. Kina's large eyes were wet with tears. We waited. We were patient. And we watched our children die. The Kresh came to our worlds every few years. They took what they wanted. They killed who they wanted, and the council did nothing except tell us they were very sorry. Other voices joined in. The Velkari representative spoke of slavery and torture. The Xinthian delegate, whose people valued logic above all else, presented statistical analysis showing that Kresh aggression had increased by 40% over the past century, while council action had decreased. The Drethni representative tried to shout them down. This is beside the point. The humans have committed murder on a massive scale. They must be punished. Punished for what? Captain Kevin Rogers spoke up. He commanded the ESS Liberty, one of the ships that had taken the heaviest damage in the battle. For defending ourselves? For making sure the species that murdered our people could not do it again? For taking the law into your own hands? The Drethni shot back. What law? Kevin demanded. Show me the law that would have protected us. Show me the council action that would have brought the Kresh to justice. Show me anything. Anything at all that would have saved even one of the 2 million people who died on New Terra. The Drethni had no answer. Jacob Carter raised his hand, and his officers fell silent. It was time to make the real point, the thing they had come here to say. We are not here to apologize, Jacob said clearly. We are not here to ask permission. We are here to make something very clear to everyone in this chamber. Humanity will defend itself, by whatever means necessary. If you attack our civilians, we will destroy your military. If you commit genocide against us, we will make sure you lack the capacity to ever do it again. This is a threat against the council, someone shouted from the back. No, Helen said firmly. This is information. Transparent information about how humanity will respond to existential threats. We are not threatening to conquer anyone. We are not demanding tribute or territory. We are simply stating our position. We will protect our own. Lieutenant Greg Mason began distributing data tablets to each delegation. The aliens looked at them with confusion and suspicion. What is this? The Chancellor asked. Complete information about Earth's military capacity, Greg answered. Ship counts, weapons systems, industrial production, defensive installations. Everything you need to know about what humanity can bring to bear if needed. The delegates began reading their tablets. Eyes went wide. Skin changed colors. Feathers ruffled. What they were seeing shocked them. In 30 years since first contact, humanity had built an enormous war machine. While other species assumed humans were still learning to navigate the stars, Earth had been preparing for the worst. 147 battle carriers, 360 destroyer-class vessels, thousands of fighters, orbital defense platforms around every colony world. You have been building for war, the Chancellor said quietly. All this time. We have been building for survival, Jacob corrected. There is a difference. Part 3. The council chamber remained in stunned silence as the delegates studied their data tablets. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had spent resources on a scale that seemed insane for such a young spacefaring species. Most civilizations took centuries to build fleets of this size. Humans had done it in 3 decades. The Xinthian delegate, whose species prided themselves on logic and analysis, stood up. His body was roughly humanoid but covered in smooth gray skin that seemed to shimmer slightly. His large black eyes showed no emotion, but his voice carried a hint of what might have been respect. The data shows remarkable efficiency, the Xinthian said. Human industrial capacity has been devoted almost entirely to military production. Your civilian infrastructure is minimal by galactic standards. You have sacrificed comfort and luxury to build weapons. We sacrificed nothing, Commander Lisa Hayes said. We chose our priorities. When you live in a galaxy where entire planets can be destroyed without consequence, military readiness becomes the only logical choice. The High Chancellor set down his tablet. His forearms moved in a gesture that his species used to show deep concern. Admiral Carter, you must understand the position this puts the Council in. If we allow one species to take military action without oversight, it sets a dangerous precedent. Others will follow your example. The entire structure of galactic civilization could collapse. Jacob crossed his arms. With respect, Chancellor, your structure failed us. It failed the Torvash. It failed the Velkari. It failed everyone who was too weak to defend themselves against predators like the Kresh. Maybe your structure needs to collapse. The chamber erupted again. Delegates shouted at each other. The Drethni representative was demanding immediate sanctions against Earth. Several smaller species were calling for calm. The Velkari ambassador was trying to propose a compromise. The noise was overwhelming. Ambassador Helen Price walked to the center of the platform. She did not raise her voice. She simply stood there waiting. Slowly, the chamber quieted down. There was something about the way she held herself that commanded attention. I taught history before I became a diplomat, Helen said. I studied how civilizations rise and fall, how empires are built and destroyed. How peace is achieved and lost, and I learned one thing that is true across all species and all times. She paused, making eye contact with as many delegates as she could. Peace without strength is just waiting to be conquered. Justice without enforcement is just words on paper. The Council has beautiful ideals, but ideals mean nothing if you cannot or will not defend them. We do defend them, the Chancellor protested. Through diplomacy, through negotiation, through building consensus. You defend nothing, Helen said flatly. You manage. You coordinate. You facilitate. But when the Kresh came to New Terra with 300 warships, where was your consensus? Where was your diplomacy? Our people screamed for help, and the only answer was silence. Ambassador Kina of the Torvash stood again. Her small frame was trembling, but her voice was steady. The humans are crude. They are violent. They do not understand our ways. But they did in 3 weeks what the Council has refused to do in 2 centuries. They made the Kresh afraid. Fear is not peace, the Drethni representative insisted. No, Captain Danny Foster agreed. But fear prevents war. The Kresh were not afraid of the Council. They had no reason to be. You would write reports about their actions. You would condemn them in speeches. And then you would do nothing. They knew this. Everyone knew this. He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed a star map of the region. There are 47 species in this council. 32 of them have been victims of Kresh aggression at some point in the past 500 years, and yet the Kresh face no consequences. Their territory grows. Their fleet grows. They act with complete immunity. Not anymore, Lieutenant Amy Collins added quietly. The Drethni representative pointed an accusing finger at the human delegation. You speak of defense, but what you have done is revenge. You did not just stop the Kresh, you annihilated them. You showed no mercy, no restraint. You are dangerous. Jacob Carter's expression hardened. Yes, we are dangerous. That is the point. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks they can kill our people without consequence. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, so be it. But our children will grow up alive because of what we did. The High Chancellor raised his arms again, calling for order. This debate can continue for days. But we must make decisions. The Council must respond to Earth's actions. The question is how. The question, Helen corrected, is whether the Council will stand against humanity for defending itself, or whether the Council will finally acknowledge that its current system has failed. She activated a new display. This one showed a proposal, written in the formal language of Council law. Humanity submits the following terms for consideration. First, Earth and all human colonies are declared sovereign territory. Any attack on human civilians will be considered an act of war against humanity as a whole. That is already standard for all Council species, the Chancellor noted. Second, Helen continued, humanity reserves the right to respond to acts of war with any and all means we deem necessary. We will not seek Council approval for defensive actions. We will not limit our response to match the severity of the attack. We will simply end the threat. The chamber filled with murmurs. This was unprecedented. No species had ever demanded such autonomy. Third, Helen said, humanity offers mutual defense treaties to any species that wishes to align with us. If you are attacked, we will defend you. If we are attacked, we expect the same. This is outrageous, the Drethni representative sputtered. You are attempting to create a rival power structure within the Council itself. No, Lieutenant Greg Mason said. We are offering protection to those who need it. If the Council will not defend its members, someone must. Ambassador Kina stood once more. The Torvash Federation formally requests a defense treaty with Earth. We have suffered enough. We will not suffer in silence any longer. The Velkari ambassador rose. The Velkari Collective also requests such a treaty. One by one, representatives from smaller species stood up. The Minuth, the Korvax, the Talarian Union. Species that had been victims, that had begged for help and received only platitudes. They saw in humanity something they had not seen before, a willingness to act. The Drethni representative looked around in horror. You cannot do this. You are tearing apart the Council. The Council was already torn, Captain Kevin Rogers said. You just could not see it because you were on the top of the heap. The strong were comfortable, so they saw no need for change. The weak suffered, but their voices did not matter. The High Chancellor looked older suddenly, tired. He had held his position for 30 years, working to maintain the delicate balance of galactic politics. Now he watched that balance crumble in front of him. If the Council moves against Earth, Helen said quietly, We will consider it a hostile act. We will withdraw from the Council entirely, and we will take our allies with us. You will face a divided galaxy, with humanity and our partners on one side and the old Council structure on the other. That is civil war, the Chancellor whispered. That is your choice, Jacob said. We did not come here seeking conflict with the Council. We came to establish our position. We will defend our people. We will honor our alliances. We will respond to threats with overwhelming force. You can accept this or you can oppose it, but you cannot stop it. The Xinthian delegate requested permission to speak. When granted, he stood with perfect posture. I have analyzed the human military data. I have reviewed the battle footage from the Kresh engagement. I have calculated probable outcomes of various scenarios. He paused, his black eyes sweeping the chamber. If the Council attempts to enforce sanctions against Earth through military means, we will lose. The human fleet is technologically advanced beyond what their age would suggest. Their tactics are brutal but effective. Their willingness to accept casualties is unprecedented. In a direct conflict, humanity would inflict massive damage even if ultimately defeated. You think they could beat the entire Council? The Drethni asked incredulously. I think, the Xinthian said carefully, that the cost of trying would be unacceptable, and I think that many species would refuse to participate in such a conflict. The Council would fracture before the first shot was fired. The truth of his words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. The old order was ending. A new one was being born, and none of them knew what shape it would take. The High Chancellor finally spoke. The Council will recess for 3 days. Delegates will consult with their homeworlds. We will reconvene to vote on humanity's status and on their proposals. This session is adjourned. As the delegates began to leave, Jacob turned to his team. They looked exhausted. The weight of what they had done, what they were doing, pressed down on all of them. Do you think they will agree? Amy asked quietly. Some will, Lisa answered. Others will fight us. But we knew this would not be easy. Helen looked at the empty chamber. We just changed the entire galaxy. For better or worse, nothing will ever be the same. Jacob nodded. Good. The old way was not working. Maybe the new way will be better. Or maybe we just traded one set of problems for another, but at least now our people have a chance. Part 4. The human delegation returned to their ships docked at Unity Station. The station was ancient, built thousands of years ago by species long forgotten. It floated in neutral space belonging to no one and everyone. Its corridors were wide enough for the largest species to move comfortably, and its life support systems could handle nearly any atmospheric requirement. Jacob Carter walked through these corridors with his team. Aliens stopped to stare at them. Some moved aside quickly as if afraid to be too close. Others watched with open curiosity. A few looked at them with something that might have been gratitude. When they reached the docking bay where the ESS Independence waited, Jacob finally allowed himself to relax slightly. The ship was home. Damaged, scarred, but home. The crew was waiting for them at the airlock. These men and women had fought beside him. Some had died beside him. How did it go, sir? Asked Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the ship's communications officer. He was young, barely out of the academy, but he had proven himself in battle. About as well as we expected, Lisa Hayes replied, which is to say, it was a disaster that might somehow work in our end. They gathered in the ship's briefing room. It was cramped compared to the vast council chamber, but it felt safer somehow. Here they could speak freely. Here, they did not need to watch every word. Captain Danny Foster pulled up a display showing communication intercepts from the past few hours. The entire galaxy is talking about us. News of what happened in the council chamber has spread fast, and news of what we did to the Kresh fleet has spread even faster. The screen showed news feeds from dozens of worlds. Headlines in languages both familiar and alien. Most were some variation of the same theme. The humans had declared themselves a force to be reckoned with. Public opinion is divided, Danny continued. The strong species, the ones who have dominated council politics for centuries, are calling us barbarians. They want us sanctioned, isolated, maybe even attacked. But the weaker species, the ones who have been victims, they are celebrating. There are demonstrations on Torvash worlds supporting us. The Velkari are calling us heroes. We are not heroes, Jacob said quietly. We did what we did for ourselves, not for them. Does it matter? Helen Price asked. They see us as protectors whether we want that role or not. And we offered them defense treaties. We made ourselves protectors by choice. Captain Kevin Rogers leaned back in his chair. The question is whether we can actually protect them. We won against the crash because we surprised them, because they underestimated us. But now everyone knows what we can do. The next enemy will be prepared. Then we prepare more, Lisa said firmly. Earth shipyards are already running at maximum capacity. Every colony world is building defense platforms. We have enough resources to expand the fleet by 30% within a year. Lieutenant Amy Collins looked troubled. But is that what we want to be? A military empire? We came to the stars to explore, to learn, to build new homes. Now we are just building more weapons. The room fell silent. It was the question they had all been avoiding. In response to violence, they had become violent. In response to fear, they had become fearsome. But at what cost? My daughter is 7 years old, Danny said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He rarely spoke about his family. She was on New Terra visiting her grandparents. She was supposed to stay there for the whole summer. But she got sick 2 weeks before the attack, and her grandparents sent her home early. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. She lived because of a childhood illness. Her grandparents died. Her aunts and uncles died. Her cousins died. Everyone she knew on that world is gone, and now she has nightmares every night. He looked around at all of them. So you ask if I want us to be a military empire? No. I want us to be whatever keeps my daughter safe. If that means building weapons, we build weapons. If that means making enemies afraid of us, we make them afraid. Because the alternative is more New Terras. Helen reached across the table and put her hand on Danny's. We will find a balance. Somehow. We have to. Because if we lose ourselves in the process of defending ourselves, then we have lost anyway. A message came through on the communication console. Lieutenant Marcus Webb answered it, then looked up with surprise. Sir, we are receiving requests for meetings. 17 different species want to speak with us privately. Some want defense treaties, some want to discuss trade, some just want to talk, Jacob frowned. 17? That is more than a third of the council. The old power structure is crumbling, the Xinthian voice said. They all turned to see a holographic projection appear in the room. It was the Xinthian delegate from the council chamber. My apologies for the intrusion. I hacked your communication system to contact you directly. I thought this conversation should be private. That is quite a trick, Lisa said, her hand moving toward her sidearm. I mean no harm, the Xinthian assured them. I am here with information and a proposal. My name is Vekran. I have served on the council for 12 years. In that time, I have watched the Drethni and other strong species make decision after decision that benefited themselves while harming others. I have calculated probabilities, run simulations, analyzed outcomes. Every analysis showed the same result. What result? Jacob asked. That the current council structure would eventually collapse under the weight of its own corruption and incompetence. I simply did not expect it to happen so quickly, or to be triggered by such a young species. Vekran's hologram moved closer. You have forced a crisis. The strong species will try to maintain their power. The weak species will try to seize their chance for justice. And in the middle of this conflict stands humanity, the unknown factor that no one can predict. What is your proposal? Helen asked. Form a coalition, Vekran said. Not just defense treaties with individual species, but an actual political alliance. Create an alternative to the council. Offer membership to any species willing to accept certain principles. Mutual defense, fair trade, protection of civilians, and most importantly, accountability. You want us to start our own council? Lisa asked incredulously. I want you to build something better, Vekran replied. The Galactic Council was formed 12,000 years ago by species who were trying to prevent wars between themselves. It worked for a time, but it evolved into a system that protected the powerful and ignored the weak. You can build something different. Something that actually enforces its own laws. Jacob stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, he could see the massive bulk of Unity Station. Ships from dozens of worlds docked there. Some were sleek and beautiful. Others were crude and functional. All of them represented species trying to coexist in a complicated galaxy. If we do this, Jacob said slowly, we become a political force, not just a military one. We become responsible for more than just defending ourselves. We become responsible for everyone who joins us. Yes, Vekran agreed. It is a heavy burden. But consider the alternative. If you do not create a new structure, the old one will eventually move against you. The Drethni and their allies will not accept a challenge to their power. They will find a way to destroy you, even if it costs them greatly. Captain Kevin Rogers stood as well. So we are damned if we do and damned if we don't? Either we take on the responsibility of protecting half the galaxy, or we wait for the other half to destroy us. Welcome to politics, Helen said dryly. Nothing is ever simple. Every choice has consequences. Lieutenant Greg Mason had been quiet, but now he spoke up. What about Earth? What about our government? We are just military officers and one diplomat. We do not have the authority to create a new galactic alliance. You have the authority of necessity, Vekran said. Earth is 3 weeks away at maximum communication speed. By the time you could contact them and receive a response, the situation here will have resolved one way or another. You must act now with the authority you have. Jacob turned back to face his team. These people had followed him into battle. They had watched friends die. They had killed enemies by the thousands. And now they were being asked to make decisions that would affect billions of lives across dozens of worlds. We vote, Jacob said. Right here, right now. Do we accept Vekran's proposal? Do we try to form a coalition? An alternative to the Council? Or do we stick to our original plan, just defend ourselves and our direct allies? I vote yes, Danny said immediately. If we have the chance to prevent what happened to New Terra from happening to others, we take it. Yes, Amy agreed. We can't just think about ourselves anymore. Not after what we have seen. Yes, Lisa said. But we need to be smart about it. We need rules, limits, clear goals. We can't just promise to protect everyone from everything. Yes, Kevin added, though I think we are all insane for even considering this. Greg nodded. Yes, my family did not come to the stars to hide. They came to build something better. This is our chance to actually do that. Helen looked at each of them, then at Vekran's hologram. Yes, but I want it on record that this is the craziest diplomatic mission in human history. Jacob smiled slightly. It was the first time he had smiled since New Terra. Unanimous, then. Vekran, tell the species that want to meet with us that we are interested, but they need to understand what they are signing up for. This will not be the old council with new faces. This will be something. Part 5. When the Galactic Council reconvened 3 days later, the chamber looked different. Where before the seats had been arranged in a circular pattern with all species theoretically equal, now there was a visible divide. On one side sat the traditional power block, led by the Drethni and their allies. On the other side sat the newer members, the smaller species, the ones who had suffered in silence. And in the middle, standing rather than sitting, was the human delegation. The High Chancellor looked older than he had 3 days ago. His silver and gold feathers seemed duller somehow. He knew that whatever happened in this session would define the rest of his career, perhaps the rest of galactic history. The Council has been consulted, the Chancellor began. Homeworlds have been contacted. Debates have been held. Now we must vote on humanity's status and their proposals. But before we vote, it seems there is new information to consider. He gestured to the human delegation. Admiral Carter, I am told that you have been busy during our recess. Jacob stepped forward. We have. During the past 3 days, 19 species have signed the Charter of the Alliance. This is a mutual defense pact and political coalition separate from the Galactic Council. The chamber exploded into noise. The Drethni representative was on his feet immediately, his skin flashing angry red. This is an act of rebellion. You are dividing the council. We are offering an alternative, Helen Price corrected calmly. Species are free to remain in the council, join the alliance, or do both. We are not forcing anyone to choose. The alliance operates on different principles than the council, Lisa Hayes explained. She activated a display showing the alliance charter. All member species agree to mutual defense. If one is attacked, all respond. But membership requires adherence to strict rules about civilian protection and war crimes. Ambassador Kina of the Torvash stood. My people have joined the alliance. For the first time in 2 centuries, we feel safe. The humans have promised to defend us, and unlike the council, they have proven they will act on their promises. The Velkari representative rose as well. The Velkari collective stands with the alliance. We have lost too much to empty words and delayed action. The humans offer protection that is real and immediate. One by one, representatives of the alliance species stood. 19 species, small but not insignificant. Together, they represented nearly 15% of the council's membership. More importantly, they represented a unified voting bloc with military backing. The Drethni representative looked around in fury. You are making a grave mistake. The Council has maintained peace for 12,000 years. You throw that away for these violent newcomers? Peace? Captain Danny Foster laughed bitterly. Tell the 2 million dead on New Terra about your peace. Tell the Torvesh colonies that were raided about your peace. Tell the Velkari children who were sold into slavery about your peace. Those were unfortunate incidents, the Drethni said dismissively. They were predictable results of a system that has no enforcement, Lieutenant Greg Mason stated. He projected new data into the chamber. In the past 500 years, there have been 273 major attacks on civilian populations in Council space. The Council responded to exactly 0 of them with military action. You passed resolutions, you formed committees, you expressed concern, and people kept dying. The Xinthian delegate Vekrin stood. I have prepared an analysis comparing the Council's response times to various crises over the past 1,000 years. The data shows a clear pattern. When strong species face threats, the Council acts quickly. When weak species are victimized, the Council delays and debates until the crisis resolves itself or the victims are destroyed. He sent the data to every delegate's tablet. The human observation that the Council protects the powerful while ignoring the weak is not opinion. It is mathematical fact. The High Chancellor raised his arms for silence. These accusations are troubling, but they do not justify the creation of a rival power structure. The Alliance threatens to divide the galaxy. The galaxy is already divided, Jacob said firmly. Between those who have power and those who suffer. Between those who are protected and those who are prey. The Alliance simply makes that division visible. A new voice spoke up. It was the representative of the Carthon Empire, a mid-sized power that had remained neutral in most Council debates. The humans raise valid concerns. However, the solution is not to abandon the Council but to reform it. Perhaps we should discuss changes to Council procedures. We have been discussing changes for centuries, Kina said softly. Nothing ever changes. The powerful block any reform that might threaten their position. Because reform requires consensus, Helen explained, and those who benefit from the current system will never consent to real change. So the cycle continues. The Council debates while people die. The Chancellor looked pained. What would you have us do? Dissolve 12,000 years of tradition? Abandon the principles that have guided galactic civilization? No, Jacob said. Keep your council. Keep your traditions. But understand that we will not wait for your permission to defend ourselves or our allies. The Alliance will act when action is needed. We will enforce rules that the Council refuses to enforce. And if the Alliance's actions conflict with Council policy, the Drethni demanded, then you will have to decide if enforcing your policy is worth going to war with us, Lisa answered bluntly. The threat hung in the air like smoke. No one wanted to speak it aloud, but everyone understood. The galaxy now had 2 power centers, and if they came into conflict, the results would be catastrophic. A delegate from the Morvan Republic stood. The Morvan were traitors, practical beings who cared more about profit than politics. Perhaps there is a middle path. The Council and the Alliance could coexist. The Council handles diplomacy and trade. The Alliance handles security and defense. Each does what it does best. Several delegates nodded thoughtfully. It was not a perfect solution, but it was pragmatic. The Council would have to accept that it no longer has a monopoly on military action in galactic space, Vekrin noted. Can the traditional powers accept that? The Drethni representative looked like he wanted to object, but other members of his bloc were already discussing the proposal among themselves. They understood the reality. Fighting the Alliance would be costly. Accepting it might preserve their economic and political power, even if they lost military dominance. The High Chancellor consulted with his advisors for several minutes. Finally, he turned back to address the chamber. I propose a compromise. The Galactic Council will officially recognize the Alliance as a sovereign entity. Alliance members may remain in the Council, and the Alliance may coordinate with Council forces on matters of mutual concern. However, the Council will not recognize Alliance military actions as Council-sanctioned unless specifically approved. Meaning we act independently, but you can claim deniability, Captain Kevin Rogers said. Meaning, the Chancellor corrected carefully, that both organizations can exist without formal conflict. It is not ideal, but it prevents civil war. Jacob looked at his team. They held a quick silent conference with just eye contact and small gestures. Finally, he turned back to the Chancellor. Earth and the Alliance accept these terms. But let us be clear about what this means. If Alliance members are attacked, we will respond with full force. The Council can approve or disapprove, but it will not stop us. Understood, the Chancellor said wearily. And if the Council tries to sanction Alliance members for defending themselves, we will consider it an act of aggression, Helen added. Also understood. The vote was called. The question was whether to officially recognize the Alliance as a legitimate entity operating within galactic space. The voting took nearly an hour as delegates consulted with their governments across light years of space. When the results were displayed, the chamber fell silent. The measure passed, but barely. 51% in favor, 49% against. The galaxy was split almost exactly in half. The Alliance is recognized, the Chancellor announced. May wisdom guide both our organizations in the years ahead. As the delegates began to leave, the Drethni representative stopped near the human delegation. His skin had settled into a dark blue pattern that indicated deep thought. You have won today, he said quietly, but this is not over. You have made many enemies, human. The strong do not forget challenges to their power. Good, Jacob replied. We would not want them to forget. Fear is the beginning of respect. The Drethni walked away, shaking his head. Ambassador Kina approached with several other Alliance representatives. Her large eyes were bright with emotion. You have given us hope. For the first time in generations, my people believe that tomorrow might be better than today. Hope is good, Helen said gently, but hope must be backed by strength. The Alliance will need to build military capacity quickly. Other threats will come. We understand, Kina assured her. We are prepared to contribute resources and troops. The Torvash may not be warriors by nature, but we will learn. Over the next several hours, the human delegation met with each Alliance member species. They discussed military coordination, shared intelligence networks, and economic cooperation. The Alliance was real now. It had to function as more than just a political statement. Finally exhausted, the humans returned. Part 6 3 weeks later. The human fleet emerged from faster than light. Travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Home. The blue and white marble hanging in the darkness of space looked impossibly beautiful after everything they had been through. Jacob Carter stood on the bridge of the ESS Independence and felt something in his chest loosen. They had made it back, but even from this distance they could see that Earth had changed. Orbital defenses had been massively expanded. New shipyards floated in high orbit, construction frames stretching for kilometers. Dozens of new warships patrolled the system, their weapons hot and ready. Earth was preparing for war. Command is hailing us, Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported. They are sending a priority shuttle to dock with us. Fleet Admiral Chen wants to speak with you personally before we reach Earth. Jacob exchanged looks with Lisa Hayes. Fleet Admiral Patricia. Chen was the highest-ranking military officer in Earth's defense forces. If she was coming out here personally, it meant the situation was serious. The shuttle arrived within an hour. Admiral Chen came aboard with a security detail and several senior staff officers. She was a small woman, barely over 5 feet tall, but she had a presence that made rooms fall silent when she entered. She had been fighting for Earth's safety since first contact with alien species 30 years ago. Admiral Carter, she said, extending her hand. Welcome home. We need to talk. They gathered in the Independence's briefing room. Chen dismissed everyone except Jacob. Lisa, Helen, Danny, and Kevin. When the door closed, she set a data tablet on the table. In the 3 weeks you have been traveling home. The galaxy has gone insane, Chen said bluntly. The alliance you created has grown to 27 member species. The Drethni and their allies have formed their own coalition, calling themselves the Preservation League. They claim they are defending traditional council values, but really they are just trying to hold on to power. She activated the tablet, showing a star map. Portions of the galaxy were color-coded. Blue for alliance members, red for the Preservation League, gray for neutral or undecided species. The galaxy is splitting into armed camps, Chen continued. We have intelligence showing that the Drethni are pressuring smaller species to join their league. Some are agreeing because they fear the alternative. Others are resisting and requesting alliance protection. How is Earth responding? Helen asked. By building everything we can as fast as we can, Chen replied. We have diverted 70% of our industrial capacity to military production. Every shipyard is working around the clock. We are training new crews as quickly as possible. And we are accepting applications from alien species who want to serve in Earth's fleet. That surprised them. Aliens serving in human ships? Lisa asked. Torvash, Vilkari, even some Xinthians, Chen confirmed. They want to learn our tactics and our technology. And frankly, we need the personnel. The Alliance has spread us thin. We have defense commitments to 27 species now, and that number keeps growing. Jacob felt the weight of responsibility settling back onto his shoulders. He had known this would happen, but the reality was still staggering. What does Earth's government say about all this? Chen smiled grimly. The politicians are divided, as always. Some think we overstepped our authority. Others think we did not go far enough. But the majority understand that we had no choice. After New Terra, showing weakness would have invited more attacks. The President wants to meet with you, Chen continued. Tomorrow you will brief the entire Security Council on everything that happened at the Galactic Council. Then you will probably spend the next month testifying before various committees while they debate what to do next. We already know what we need to do, Danny said. We need to make the Alliance strong enough that no one dares test us. That is one opinion, Chen agreed. But there are others. Some politicians want to scale back our commitments. They argue that we cannot be the galaxy's police force. Others want to expand aggressively, bring in more species, build a true rival to the old council. Helen leaned back in her chair. The problem is that we are moving too fast. We created the Alliance in a moment of crisis. Now we need to define what it actually is. What are our goals? What are our limits? What are we willing to fight for? And what are we willing to compromise on? These are good questions, Chen said. And they need answers soon. Because while you were in transit, we had our first test. She changed the display to show a new star system. The Carthus system, home to a species called the Lyrene. Population 2 billion. They applied for Alliance membership 2 weeks ago. The Drethni immediately declared that Carthus was in their sphere of influence and that Alliance expansion into that region would be considered an act of aggression. Let me guess, Kevin said. The Drethni sent warships to blockade the system. 42 ships, Chen confirmed. They are not attacking, just preventing anyone from entering or leaving. They say they are conducting security operations. We say it is an illegal blockade of a sovereign system. Jacob studied the map. How far is Carthus from the nearest Alliance territory? 3 days at maximum speed, Chen answered. We have a battle group ready to depart on your order. My order? Jacob looked surprised. The President has appointed you as the first Supreme Commander of Alliance forces, Chen explained. Congratulations, you just got a promotion and a headache. The Alliance species insisted on you. They trust you because you kept your word about defending them. Now they want you to make the strategic decisions. The room was silent for a moment. Jacob had led a fleet in battle. He had represented Earth at the Galactic Council. But commanding the entire military force of an interstellar alliance was something else entirely. I need time to think about this, Jacob said. You have until tomorrow morning, Chen replied. That is when the Drethni ultimatum expires. Either we back down on Carthus, or they will consider the alliance in breach of galactic peace. And if we do not back down, Lisa asked. Then we find out if everyone's posturing about being willing to fight was serious, Chen said grimly. We could be looking at the first major war in council space in 3,000 years, and it will be our fault. After Chen left, the 5 of them sat in silence. The weight of the decision ahead pressed down on all of them. They had come so far, done so much, but now they faced the consequence of their actions. We cannot back down, Danny said finally. If we let the Drethni dictate who can join the alliance, we might as well disband it now. We will look weak, and every species considering membership will think twice. But if we go to war over this, people will die, Amy Collins said. She had joined the meeting late, coming off duty. Real people, maybe thousands of them. Are the Lyrene worth that? That is the wrong question, Helen said quietly. The right question is, are we willing to let the Drethni control the galaxy through threats and intimidation? Because if we are, then everything we did at the council was pointless. Jacob stood and walked to the viewport. Earth was larger now, close enough that he could make out continents and oceans. Somewhere down there, Danny's daughter was having nightmares about New Terra. Somewhere down there, 2 million families were mourning people who would never come home. I will go to Carthus, Jacob said, with the fleet. We will break the blockade if necessary, but we will try diplomacy first. Maybe the Drethni are bluffing. Maybe they will back down when they see we are serious. And if they do not back down? Kevin asked. Then we show them what happened to the creche, Jacob replied. We cannot build a new order if we are afraid to defend it. The Drethni need to understand that the days of them controlling everything are over. Lisa nodded. I agree. We made promises to 19 species, now 27. If we break those promises at the first test, we are no better than the old council. The next morning, Jacob stood before Earth's Security Council in a building that had once been the United Nations headquarters. Politicians from every nation sat in the tiered seats, all of them wanting to question him, to understand what he had done and why. President Sarah Martinez, who had led Earth through first contact and the difficult years that followed, called the session to order. She was getting old now, her hair gray and her face lined with worry, but her voice was still strong. Admiral Carter, you have returned from the Galactic Council having fundamentally altered humanity's place in the galaxy. Some call you a hero, others call you a warmonger. Before we debate what to do next, we need to understand exactly what happened. Tell us your story. For the next 3 hours, Jacob recounted everything. The arrival at the council chamber, the revelation of New Terra, the destruction of the Creche fleet, the formation of the Alliance. He left nothing out. He explained every decision, every calculation, every moment of doubt. When he finished, the chamber erupted in questions and arguments. Some representatives praised his actions. Others demanded he be relieved of command for exceeding his authority. The debate raged for hours. Finally, President Martinez called for silence. Admiral Carter, you face a choice tonight. The Drethni blockade of Carthus. What will you do? Jacob stood. He was tired, more tired than he had ever been in his life. But he was also certain. I will take a fleet to Carthus. I will demand the Drethni withdraw. And if they refuse, I will remove them by force. Because that is what